Disappear into your own home. Watch everything. Trust no one. Those were the instructions Bernard Springsteen gave himself the day he erased his identity and became Ali, a humble chef in his own mansion. He needed to know if his elegant new bride was the monster his children's silence suggested. What he witnessed from behind the kitchen door would shatter his carefully constructed life. Because sometimes the greatest danger doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the person sleeping beside you. Sometimes you have to lose yourself to save the ones you love. This is the story of a father who surrendered everything to uncover the truth. A woman who wore elegance like armor while cruelty lived beneath. And a nanny who refused to stay silent when innocence hung in the balance. Today, I'm sharing this story with you. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that deserve to be heard and truths that need to be told. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because together, we're not just telling stories, we're standing for those who can't stand for themselves. The day Bernard Springsteen realized his mistake, sunlight was pouring through the tall windows of the Springsteen estate, making everything look golden and safe. He stood in his study, phone pressed to his ear, half listening to an investor drone on about quarterly projections. Through the doorway, he could see the grand marble foyer where Vanessa stood, perfectly composed in a cream silk blouse and tailored slacks. She was speaking to Ruby. Bernard couldn't hear the words, but he saw his 7-year-old daughter's body language. Shoulders hunched, eyes down, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Vanessa leaned closer, her expression serene, her voice too quiet to carry. Ruby nodded once, twice. Then she turned and walked up the staircase like a child heading to her own execution. Bernard's chest tightened. That night, after Vanessa had gone to bed, he knocked softly on Ruby's door. Sweetheart. She was sitting on her bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit, the one she'd barely touched in months. Hi, Daddy. He sat beside her carefully. Ruby, are you okay? You seemed upset earlier. I'm fine. Are you sure? You know you can tell me anything, right? Ruby's fingers tightened around the rabbit's worn ears. For a moment, Bernard thought she might speak. Then her face went blank, smooth as glass. I'm just tired, Daddy. School was long today. He wanted to push. He wanted to demand the truth. But something in her eyes, something afraid, stopped him cold. Okay, he whispered, kissing her forehead. I love you. I love you too. As he closed the door, he heard it. Tiny, choked sound, like someone trying not to cry. 2 days later, Bernard called his oldest friend and attorney, Marcus Chen, to his downtown office. The meeting was discreet. No assistants. No records. You look terrible, Marcus said bluntly, pouring bourbon into 2 glasses. I think Vanessa is hurting my children. Marcus froze mid-pour. What? I don't have proof. But Ruby won't talk to me anymore. Finn jumps when doors close. And Vanessa? Bernard's jaw tightened. She's different when she thinks I'm not watching. Have you confronted her? With what? A feeling? She'll deny it. She'll make me sound paranoid. Bernard leaned forward, hands clasped. I need proof, Marcus. Real proof. Then hire an investigator. An outsider changes the dynamic. Vanessa will sense it. She's too smart. Bernard paused. I need to see what happens when I'm not there, when she believes no one is watching. Marcus studied him. What are you saying? I'm saying I disappear. Officially. I announce a month-long acquisition overseas. But I don't leave. Bernard's voice dropped. I stay in the house. Disguised. Hidden in plain sight. Bernard, that's insane? Illegal? Desperate? Bernard's eyes were steel. I don't care. Those are my children, Marcus. And if I'm wrong, I'll deal with the consequences. But if I'm right, his voice cracked. If I'm right, and I do nothing, I'll never forgive myself. Marcus set down his glass. If you do this, I never heard about it. Understood. Bernard nodded. And Bernard. Marcus's expression was grim. If you find what you're looking for, you'd better be ready for war. Because a woman like Vanessa won't go quietly. 3 days later, Bernard Springston stood in front of his bathroom mirror, barely recognizing himself. The expensive haircut was gone, replaced by something cheaper, Messier. He'd grown stubble, traded his Italian suits for plain black chef's whites and worn kitchen clogs. The man staring back at him looked ordinary, forgettable, perfect. He'd already planted the story. A sudden, urgent acquisition in Singapore. Investors demanding his physical presence. A month minimum, possibly longer. Vanessa had taken the news with unsettling calm. A whole month? She'd asked, sipping her wine. I'm sorry. I know it's. No. She'd smiled. You have to do what's necessary for the business. The children and I will manage just fine. That smile haunted him now. The new chef, Ali, had been hired through a staffing agency Bernard secretly controlled. The paperwork was flawless, background checks clean, references glowing. When he arrived at his own estate the next morning, Ivy answered the kitchen door. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled into a practical ponytail and eyes that assessed him carefully. She wore simple jeans and a sweater, an apron already tied at her waist. You must be Ali, she said, her voice warm but cautious. Yes, ma'am. Bernard kept his voice rougher, his posture slouched. Reporting for duty. Ivy smiled slightly. Welcome. I'm Ivy, the nanny. Mrs. Springston is out this morning, so I'll show you around. As she led him through the kitchen. His kitchen, filled with appliances he'd chosen. Bernard felt the surreal weight of his decision. He was a stranger in his own home. The children will be down soon, Ivy said, organizing ingredients. Ruby and Finn. They're good kids. Just. She hesitated. Just what? Ivy glanced toward the hallway, then back at him. Just be patient with them. They've been through a lot. Bernard's throat tightened. I will. When Ruby and Finn entered the kitchen 10 minutes later, escorted by Vanessa, Bernard's heart nearly stopped. His daughter looked smaller than she had just days ago. His son's eyes were too watchful for a 5-year-old. Children, Vanessa said crisply. This is Ali, our new chef. You will address him respectfully and stay out of his way. Understood. Yes, ma'am, Ruby whispered. Finn just nodded. Vanessa's gaze swept over Bernard without recognition. I expect meals precisely on time, Ollie. No excuses. Yes, Mrs. Springston. She turned on her heel and left, heels clicking against marble. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ivy knelt beside the children. How about some breakfast? What would you like? Ruby glanced nervously toward the doorway. Whatever Mrs. Springston said we could have. She didn't specify, Ivy said gently. So you get to choose. For just a moment, something flickered in Ruby's face. Hope, maybe, or hunger for something more than food. Pancakes? She whispered. Ivy smiled. Pancakes it is. As Bernard began mixing batter, his hands shaking slightly, he caught Ivy watching him. Their eyes met, and in that brief moment he knew. She saw something in those children too. Something wrong. He wasn't alone in this house, but he was about to discover that witnessing evil and stopping it are two very different things, and that sometimes the person with the least power holds the most courage. The game had begun. The mask was in place, and the truth was waiting. Bernard remembered the night he met Vanessa like a dream that had curdled into nightmare. It was a charity gala, 18 months after his first wife's death. He'd been drowning in grief and single parenthood when Vanessa glided across the ballroom in emerald silk. She spoke fluent French with the ambassador's wife, laughed at the mayor's jokes. When she knelt to compliment Ruby's dress, his daughter had actually smiled. She's remarkable, Marcus had whispered. Careful, Bernard. He hadn't been careful. He'd been desperate. The courtship was a performance he'd mistaken for love. Vanessa knew exactly which charities to support, which schools to praise, which circles to cultivate. She transformed his grief-stricken household into something that looked like a family again. But the woman who charmed investors over wine wasn't the woman who closed the bedroom door. Private Vanessa kept spreadsheets of the children's mistakes, instituted consequences for infractions like talking too loudly or leaving toys visible. She never yelled. Her cruelty was surgical, delivered in calm, measured tones that made the children doubt their own perceptions. "I'm helping them," she told Bernard once. "Your guilt has made them weak." He'd believed her. God help him, he'd actually believed her. Ivy had arrived 3 months ago, hired when the previous nanny quit without explanation. She was different, present, protective. Bernard noticed how she positioned herself between Vanessa and the children during tense moments. He'd asked Ruby once if everything was okay. She'd smiled that hollow smile. "Everything's perfect, Daddy." But one evening, he'd paused outside the nursery door. Ivy was tucking Finn in, and Ruby's small voice floated through the crack. "She's different when Daddy isn't here." Bernard's blood had frozen. 2 weeks later, he'd disappeared into his own home. Pause for a second. Team Ivy or Team Bernard? Who's the real hero of this story so far? Comment Team Ivy or Team Bernard. I'm watching the results closely. Marcus had listened to Bernard's plan in stunned silence. Then he'd poured himself another bourbon. "If this goes sideways, I never heard a word of this conversation." "Understood." "And Bernard? If you're wrong about her." "I'm not." Bernard had rehearsed the announcement over dinner 3 nights later. Vanessa sat across from him, candlelight catching the diamonds at her throat. "Singapore," he said carefully. "The Chun acquisition. They're demanding I oversee the transition personally. For weeks, minimum." He'd expected protest, concern, something. Instead, Vanessa dabbed her lips with her napkin, expression serene. "How unfortunate. But business is business. You'll be all right? With the children?" Her smile was glass smooth. "Of course. We'll establish a better routine without distractions." That word, distractions, made his skin crawl. Ali arrived 2 days after Bernard's supposed departure. Plain face, quiet demeanor, forgettable in every way. Ivy showed him the kitchen, explaining meal schedules and dietary preferences. Bernard memorized details he already knew while hating himself for the deception. His children were eating breakfast 10 feet away, and he couldn't hold them. "You're very observant," Ivy said suddenly. Bernard's pulse spiked. "Ma'am, most chefs focus on the food. You keep watching the doorways." He forced a shrug. "Just learning the household rhythm." She studied him a moment longer, then nodded. That afternoon, Bernard was chopping vegetables when Vanessa's voice drifted from the hallway, cold and satisfied. "Good. Now we can finally fix them." His knife slipped. Blood welled across his thumb, but he barely felt it. Fix them. The hunt had begun. From the kitchen, Bernard Springston watched his life unravel in fragments. Day 3, Ruby spilled juice at breakfast. Vanessa's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. "Clumsy. Again." She didn't raise her hand. She didn't need to. "No lunch today. Maybe hunger will teach you focus." Ruby's face crumpled, but she nodded silently. Bernard's grip on the spatula turned white-knuckled. Day 5, Finn asked for a second helping of pasta. Vanessa smiled coldly. "Greedy children become fat, useless adults. You'll eat what I give you when I give it to you." The boy was 5 years old. Day 7. Vanessa summoned the household staff to the dining room. Ruby stood in the center, trembling, a stain on her dress. "This is what happens when we don't listen," Vanessa announced. "Everyone see? This is embarrassment. This is consequence." Ruby stared at the floor, cheeks burning. Bernard recorded everything. His phone hidden in his apron captured every word, every calculated cruelty. But Ivy was recording too in her own way. Late nights, Bernard heard soft footsteps in the kitchen. Ivy warming milk, making sandwiches, smuggling food to hungry children while their stepmother slept. Their eyes met once across the dimly lit room. No words, just understanding. The next morning, Vanessa dismissed Ivy's suggestion about Ruby's math homework. I don't pay you to think. I pay you to obey. That evening, Bernard was cleaning the stove when he heard Vanessa on the phone. Her voice a venomous whisper. Fear lasts longer than love, mother. They'll learn. His hands shook. He'd heard enough, but he hadn't seen the worst yet. If you were Ivy right now, would you, quit and save yourself? B, stay and risk everything, or C, call the authorities? Comment A, B, or C. There's no wrong answer, just honest ones. You're fired. Vanessa delivered the words over morning coffee, casual as discussing weather. I've noticed your insubordination. You undermine my authority with the children. Ivy stood perfectly still. Mrs. Springston, I've only packed by noon. Bernard watched from the kitchen doorway, his heart hammering. If Ivy left, the children would have no one. But Ivy didn't move. No. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Fire me if you must. But I'm not leaving until Mr. Springston returns. He hired me. Only he can dismiss me. The silence was glacial. Then Vanessa smiled, a terrible, patient smile. We'll see about that. That afternoon, Finn climbed the marble staircase banister, something he'd done 100 times before. But this time, the railing was freshly polished, slick as ice. His foot slipped. Ivy lunged, catching him mid-fall, her shoulders slamming into the wall. The boy clung to her, sobbing. Vanessa appeared at the top of the stairs. Clumsy child. Ivy, he's not to have dessert tonight. Consequences. No. Ivy's voice was steel. What did you say? He almost died because someone overpolished a child's play area. He's having dessert, and dinner, and whatever else he needs. Bernard had never seen defiance like that. Raw. Fearless. That night, he found Ivy icing her bruised shoulder in the kitchen. Their eyes met. Thank you, he said quietly. She nodded. Someone has to. The next morning, Vanessa cornered Ivy in the hallway, voice low and venomous. Next time, I won't be patient. The luncheon was Vanessa's masterpiece. 50 elite guests wandered the estate grounds, champagne flutes catching sunlight. She'd orchestrated every detail, the flowers, the music, the carefully curated guest list. And the children, displayed like porcelain dolls in their finest clothes. Ruby, darling, play something on the piano for Mrs. Castellano, Vanessa commanded, her smile diamond-hard. Ruby stood frozen beside the grand piano. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Ruby. Vanessa's voice dropped to ice. Now. The girl's hands trembled. She shook her head mutely. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa's composure cracked at the edges. We'll discuss this later, she said through her smile, fingers digging into Ruby's shoulder as she steered her away. Minutes later, Finn knocked over a serving tray in the hallway. Crystal shattered across marble. Guests turned, murmuring. Vanessa's face went white with rage. Bernard was serving canapés when he heard the door slam. He abandoned his tray, moving toward the West Wing study. Inside, Vanessa towered over both children. Ruby was crying silently. Finn's lip quivered. You humiliated me, Vanessa hissed. In front of everyone. Do you understand what you've done? They're children, Ivy said from the doorway, stepping inside. It was an accident. Get out. No. Ivy moved between Vanessa and the children, her body a shield. Vanessa's hand rose, fingers curled into a striking position. Time stopped. Bernard's muscles coiled. The hand hung in the air, trembling with fury. Drop a lightning emoji if your heart is racing right now. If you can feel the tension building, you're not alone. Share this with someone who needs to see what happens next. The blow came fast. A sharp crack across Ivy's cheekbone as she turned her face to shield Finn. The sound echoed through the open doorway into the hallway where guests had gathered, drawn by raised voices. Ivy staggered but didn't fall. Ruby and Finn immediately latched onto her, small arms wrapping around her waist, her legs, anywhere they could reach. The room froze. 50 pairs of eyes witnessed it. The elegant Mrs. Springston, hands still raised, breathing hard. The nanny with a blooming red mark across her face. 2 terrified children clinging to the only person who'd protected them. Someone gasped. A champagne flute shattered on the floor. Vanessa's composure shattered with it. She was insubordinate. The children need discipline. This is a private family matter. We all saw what happened. Mrs. Castellano's voice cut through the air, cold with judgment. Vanessa's eyes darted around the room, searching for allies. She found only disgust. In the kitchen doorway, Bernard felt something inside him snap. Not break, snap, like a cable pulled too tight for too long. His children were sobbing into Ivy's skirt. His wife, the monster he'd married, stood exposed but still trying to manipulate the narrative. He'd seen enough, recorded enough, hidden long enough. Ali removed his chef's hat, then his apron. Then he stepped forward into the light, his voice dropping to its natural register. Deep, commanding, unmistakable. That's enough, Vanessa. The room gasped as recognition rippled through the crowd. Bernard Springston had returned. The mask comes off. Comment the first word that comes to mind when Bernard reveals himself. Let's flood this comment section with your reactions. Vanessa's face drained of color. Bernard? But you're in Singapore. He pulled the fake beard away, revealing the face every society page in the city knew. I never left. The crowd erupted in whispers. Phones appeared, cameras aimed. Vanessa's shock twisted into fury. You spied on me? In our own home? This is illegal. It's documentation. Bernard pulled his phone from his pocket, connecting it to the study's sound system. Of systematic child abuse. He pressed play. Vanessa's voice filled the room, cold and clear, clumsy. No lunch today. Maybe hunger will teach you focus. Then, greedy children become fat, useless adults. Then, fear lasts longer than love, mother. They'll learn. Each recording landed like a physical blow. Guests stood frozen, horrified. Mrs. Castellano covered her mouth. Vanessa's carefully constructed facade crumbled. Those are out of context. I was teaching them discipline, structure. Bernard, tell them. You know how difficult they've been. I know, Bernard said quietly, that you terrorized my children, starved them, humiliated them, and struck the only person brave enough to protect them. This is a misunderstanding. Security is waiting in the foyer. His voice was steel. You have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings. Everything else stays, including your ring. Vanessa looked around desperately, but found only judgment staring back. 2 security guards appeared at the door. She left in silence. Her empire of cruelty collapsed. Bernard turned slowly. His eyes found Ivy, still holding his children. Real question. Was Bernard right to go undercover? Or should he have confronted Vanessa directly from the start? Debate in the comments. I want to hear both sides. The guests left in hushed clusters, their gossip already spinning into tomorrow's headlines. Bernard didn't care. He knelt on the marble floor where his children still clung to Ivy. Ruby. Finn. His voice cracked. I'm so sorry. Ruby lifted her tear-stained face. For a long moment, she just stared at him. This man who'd been there all along, hidden behind a chef's uniform. Then, in a voice small but clear, you came back. I never left, sweetheart. I needed to see the truth. She was mean, Finn whispered. Really mean. I know. And I should have seen it sooner. Bernard's eyes burned. I should have protected you. Ruby released Ivy and wrapped her arms around her father's neck. You did. You and Ivy. Bernard looked up at the woman still standing there, bruise darkening on her cheek, exhausted but steady. You risked everything, he said. Your job, your safety, for children who weren't even yours. Ivy's smile was tired but genuine. They needed someone. That was enough. It was everything. Bernard stood slowly, still holding Ruby. This house is yours as long as you want it. Not as staff, as family. 3 weeks later, the French doors to the garden stood wide open. Ruby's laughter rang across the lawn as she chased Finn through the flower beds Bernard had once tended as Ollie. Ivy sat on the terrace steps, watching them with quiet contentment. Bernard joined her, 2 cups of tea in hand. They're healing, Ivy said. Because of you. She shook her head. Because someone finally chose them over everything else. In the garden, Ruby stopped running and turned back toward the house. For the first time in months, her smile reached her eyes. The mansion exhaled. And for the first time since Vanessa arrived, it felt like home. Sometimes the greatest courage isn't fighting the monster. It's being willing to see it. And sometimes the real hero isn't the one with power. It's the one who refuses to look away.